Let's try to understand what a good communicator is, and whether you can actually reach the people who actually need to be reached, the high-hanging fruit, for example, or total deniers, total disbelievers. Okay, this is Richard Somerville with Dalai Lama, who's obviously known as one of the great communicators. So was Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela. These people brought something to their message, their delivery, their language, their metaphors, and so on that made them great communicators. And is that still the same as climate change? In many ways, yes, because they had to reach people who had to commit to fight for a cause and stay with it and have sustained action till success was achieved. So what can we learn from them? The idea is always to be careful about who you are talking to. Let's say you're somebody who's being invited to media interviews all the time, and you have your standard lines of communication about whatever the again, as I said, CO2 increasing, ocean warming, cyclones getting stronger, and so on and so forth. And we are passionate and we think we are really reaching people. But who are we reaching? Are we even having the effect we think we are having? So the idea is to not make sure you're not only preaching to the choir. Oftentimes when I'm invited to talk about climate change, it is people who already believe in it, and they are just thinking of me as a climate scientist who's going to come and answer a few questions they have, just to clarify things. So they are not some people who are trying to change their minds from not believing in climate change to believing in climate change. They already have a general idea and they just want more details. So am I really reaching only the low-hanging fruit, or am I ever going to reach the high-hanging fruit? So guiding philosophy that underlies our approach to climate communication has to be well defined, well rehearsed, if you will, and should be very consistent, using simple, clear messages. Even things like saying human-made or man-made. Well, human-made is better just for gender neutrality, instead of anthropogenic, even though slowly anthropogenic is becoming part of the vocabulary of the general public. So change the vocabulary with scientific terminology like anthropogenic, but in the meantime make sure you know the audience and use the right words. Repeat often by a variety of trusted messengers. This is important. People have a very clear preference for people they trust, where the messages come from. For example, farmers would like them more from government sources versus private companies that are selling them genetically modified seeds or fertilizers or crop insurance and so on and so forth. Okay, so there are sources like this that Richard himself was involved in setting up. climatecommunication.org, which has lots of resources, a lot of hints and videos to train you and to give you general information and so on. We'll look at a couple of more sites that offer more of the climate information as opposed to communication guidance, and climate information to address the most common questions you would get from people who are not sure or who are deniers or skeptics or whatever. The more you say, the less they hear. Okay, a wise doctor speaks to you in simple, clear terms. So it's very important not to repeat the message without making sure that the audience is on the same page. If you keep on saying sea level is rising and you are sitting in Bangladesh, it may be okay. But if you're sitting in a place where sea level is actually not rising as fast as the global rate, or may even be decreasing, because just like temperature, sea level is not rising everywhere. Okay, it's rising in some places, rising much faster in some places, slower, and it's decreasing in some places because there is also the dynamics, the weather and climate, which pull the ocean around and the sea level rise will not be uniform. It's not like a bathtub that's rising everywhere. So you have to be very careful where you are talking about what. So it's like a doctor telling you what is more specific to you about what you need to worry about, whether it's diet, exercise, medication, smoking, weight, obesity, whatever, right? Know your audience and know your own strengths and weaknesses. What are your own strengths and weaknesses? Fishoff and Pigeon from Carnegie Mellon have written incredibly nice papers. This is from one of their papers, where they talk about how scientists, climate scientists, tend to completely overestimate their ability to communicate because they give seminars in front of people who already believe and they feel very good, and there is no feedback. It's not like a conversation. You are standing on the podium giving a talk and getting few questions, so there is no clear direct feedback about how good you are. That can be a big issue. Okay, so few points the paper makes. This one is expertise needed for effective communication of climate science to aid climate related decision making. So this is not communicating with the general public but with decision makers, remembering that decision makers have many factors to deal with. Scientists in general may be overestimating the value of science for decision making. For example, subject matter experts who can represent the latest science on topics that matter to their audience. Okay, those scientists might include climatologists, ecologists, economists, engineers, physicists, or others, as the decisions require. Depends on whether it's infrastructure, whether it's saving biodiversity, or making appropriate green investments, and so on. Decision scientists. So these are the experts needed. Subject matter experts, decision scientists who can identify the most relevant aspects of that science and summarize it concisely, including the uncertainties and controversies. Social and communication scientists who can assess the public's beliefs and values, propose evidence-based designs for communication content and processes, and evaluate the performance of the message, whether it's actually reaching. Program designers who can orchestrate the process so that mutually respectful consultations occur, messages are properly delivered, and policymakers hear their various publics. So these are not simple. The other resources are this one, climate communication, that we talked about just now, Richard Somerville's. You can see the kind of message they like to give. Instead of just saying it's going to warm everywhere, if you list the number of days above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so you can see where the hot spots are in the southwest and central south, and there are large parts where the numbers do increase but not as much. So climate change is not uniform, right? You have to be very careful about making sure that you don't go in places where climate change impact is going to be different and say that everything is going to get worse, because as I have repeatedly said, there are places where climate change and global warming in particular, may be welcome, like in Siberia. Okay? I'm just saying that as an example. I'm not sure if Siberians are waiting for the snow to melt away. Maybe they love their cold winters and so on. So anyway, you have to know your audience, target your message to the audience, and be the expert, and be sure when you're not an expert, be sure to admit that you are not an expert, and be aware of the controversies.